castle walls had witnessed 1,000 stories, but none quite like mine. They called me just a servant, a whisper that followed me like a shadow as I scrubbed marble floors beneath the boots of nobles who never saw me. I was the girl who disappeared into corners, who knew how to make herself invisible. Until the night of the blood moon, when I dared to speak against tradition, to save a child marked for sacrifice. I never expected to catch the Alpha King's golden gaze, never imagined his voice would rise above the outraged nobility to declare, "She's just a servant," he whispered, "but under the blood moon I crown her my queen." Now I stand at the precipice of power, a crown upon my head that feels too heavy, too foreign. The nobility circles like wolves scenting weakness, waiting for me to falter. The wolf hunters gather at our borders with silver weapons and ancient hatred, and the Alpha King watches me with eyes that burn with secrets he has yet to reveal. They say the blood moon changes everything it touches. They never told me it would remake me entirely, from invisible to immortalized, from powerless to powerful, yet still feeling like the servant girl who doesn't belong. But perhaps that's exactly why I'm here. Perhaps what the kingdom needs isn't another noble born to privilege, but someone who remembers what it means to kneel. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The castle always felt coldest on the eve of the blood moon. Lysandra scrubbed at the marble floors of the great hall, her knees aching against the hard stone, fingers raw from hours of work. Around her, the nobility of the Black Crest pack hurried about, adorned in their finest garments, ignoring her as though she were nothing but another piece of furniture. "Careful with those candles!" Lady Esmeralda snapped, her voice sharp enough to make Lysandra flinch. They must be placed precisely at the corners of the altar. The ritual demands perfection. Lysandra kept her head down, moving her cleaning rag in rhythmic circles. She'd learned years ago that the best way to survive was to become invisible. Not that it was difficult. Nobody looked twice at a servant, especially not one born without status or connections. "You there, girl." A heavy hand landed on her shoulder, and Lysandra looked up to find Lord Darius, the pack's high priest, glaring down at her. His silver hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and his gray eyes held no warmth. "Why is the eastern section still wet? The ceremony begins in 3 hours, and the Alpha King himself will walk these floors." "I'm almost finished, my lord," Lysandra murmured, keeping her gaze lowered respectfully. "The rain made the floors especially dirty today." Lord Darius made a sound of disgust. "Make haste, and once you're done, help in the kitchens. We need every pair of hands tonight." She nodded, watching as he stalked away, his ceremonial robe sweeping behind him. Lysandra had never understood why the blood moon ceremony required such grandeur. The castle had been in chaos for weeks preparing for it, and the tension in the air was palpable. "Do you think it's true?" The whispered voice came from behind one of the massive pillars, where 2 young noblewomen had paused in their duties of hanging decorations. "About the sacrifice?" "It must be," the other replied, her voice lowered, but not enough to escape Lysandra's keen hearing. "Every 25 years, when the blood moon reaches its zenith, the goddess demands tribute. They say the Alpha King himself chooses the child." Lysandra's hand stilled on the floor, a chill running through her that had nothing to do with the cold stone beneath her palms. "How barbaric," the first woman said, though her tone suggested fascination rather than horror. "But necessary, I suppose. The goddess's blessing ensures our pack's dominance for another generation." "Hush, Helena. Such matters aren't for public discussion." The women moved on, their whispered conversation fading as they continued hanging the blood-red banners around the hall. Lysandra resumed her work, but her mind raced. She'd heard rumors, of course. Every servant had, but she'd always dismissed them as castle gossip. A child sacrifice. Surely, in these modern times, such practices were mere symbolic gestures. The pack couldn't possibly still be taking innocent lives in the name of some ancient belief. As Lysandra finished the last section of floor, the great doors of the hall swung open, letting in a gust of cold evening air. Warriors of the royal guard entered first, their backs straight, eyes alert. Behind them came a procession of council members, their faces solemn. And then he entered, Alpha King Thorn. The air in the room seemed to change, growing thicker, heavier with his presence. He was taller than any man Lysandra had ever seen, his shoulders broad beneath a cloak of midnight fur. His hair, black as a starless night, was pulled back from a face that seemed carved from stone itself. But it was his eyes that struck her most, golden like the harvest moon, and just as cold and distant. This was the ruler of the 5 territories, the Alpha, whose name was whispered in fear and awe across the lands. Lysandra had glimpsed him from afar on the rare occasions he visited Blackcrest Castle, but never this close. She shrank back against the wall, clutching her cleaning rag, willing herself to become part of the shadows. "Your Majesty," Lord Darius stepped forward, bowing deeply. "We are honored by your presence. The preparations for tonight's ceremony are nearly complete." King Thorn nodded once, his gaze sweeping the hall with cold assessment. "And the tribute?" A heavy silence fell over the room. Several council members exchanged glances, and Lord Darius cleared his throat. "We have selected a child from the outer villages, Your Majesty. The parents were informed of the honor bestowed upon their family." "Show me." The command was quiet, but unmistakable. Lord Darius gestured, and 2 guards stepped forward. Between them walked a small figure, and Lysandra's heart contracted painfully in her chest. It was a little girl, no more than 6 years old. Her dark hair was braided with red ribbons, and she wore a white dress that seemed too large for her thin frame. Her face was pale with fear, eyes wide and uncomprehending as she was led before the Alpha King. "This is Alara, daughter of a hunter from the Pine Creek territory," Lord Darius announced. "She has been deemed suitable for the sacred honor." King Thorn studied the child, his expression unreadable. "She is small, but healthy and strong in spirit, Your Majesty. The goddess will be pleased." The little girl trembled, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She looked around the grand hall, perhaps searching for her parents, for anyone who might help her. Her gaze caught Lysandra's for just a moment, a brief connection across the room, child to servant, both powerless in their own ways. Something twisted in Lysandra's chest. She knew what it was to be considered dispensable, to be valued only for what you could provide to those in power. But this was a child. "Take her to the preparation chambers," King Thorn commanded. "The ritual begins at midnight." As the guards led the little girl away, Lysandra found herself unable to move, her knees locked, her breath caught in her throat. The room began to clear, nobles and officials following their Alpha King toward the feast that would precede the ceremony. "You," a sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "Servant girl." "Lady Esmeralda requires fresh linens in the eastern wing." Lysandra nodded automatically, gathering her cleaning supplies, but her mind remained fixed on the child's face, on those frightened eyes that had met hers across the hall, an innocent, condemned to die for nothing more than the accident of her birth and the superstitions of those in power. As she made her way through the servants' corridors, a decision began to form in Lysandra's mind. Reckless, foolish, but impossible to ignore. For 22 years, she had kept her head down, done as she was told, made herself invisible. Tonight, for once in her life, she would stand up and be seen. The eastern wing was quiet. Most of the castle's occupants now gathered in the great hall for the pre-ceremony feast. Lysandra moved quickly, her arms filled with fresh linens, her heart pounding in her chest. She had overheard the guards mentioning that the child was being kept in the Tower of Offering, a circular chamber normally used for visiting dignitaries. As she approached the tower stairs, she saw 2 guards posted at the entrance. Her stomach sank. Of course, they wouldn't leave the tribute unattended. She hesitated, clutching the linens to her chest, her mind racing. She had no plan, no weapons, no authority. What could she possibly— "You there!" one of the guards called out, spotting her. "What business have you here?" Lysandra swallowed hard, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Fresh linens for the child, sir. Lady Esmeralda sent me. She said the tribute should rest comfortably before the ceremony." The guards exchanged glances. "No one mentioned this," the taller one said suspiciously. "I'm just following orders, sir." Lysandra kept her gaze lowered, adopting the demeanor she'd perfected over years of servitude. Deferential, unquestioning, harmless. After a moment's hesitation, the guard nodded. "Make it quick." Relief washed over her, though she was careful not to show it. She climbed the spiral staircase, each step bringing her closer to the point of no return. What she was contemplating wasn't just dangerous. It was treason against the Alpha King himself. The chamber at the top of the tower was small, but lavishly appointed, with thick carpets and heavy velvet drapes. The little girl sat on the edge of the bed, still in her white dress, her small hands folded in her lap. She looked up when Lysandra entered, her eyes red from crying. "Hello," Lysandra said softly, setting down the linens and approaching slowly. "My name is Lysandra. What's yours?" "Ilara," the child whispered, her voice barely audible. "Are you here to take me to the ceremony?" The innocent question broke something inside Lysandra's chest. She knelt before the little girl, meeting her eyes directly. "No, Ilara, I'm here to help you." Confusion flickered across the child's face. "But the priest said I have to go. He said it's an honor, that the goddess chose me." "The goddess doesn't ask for children's lives," Lysandra replied firmly, though she had no idea if this was true. She only knew what felt right in her heart. "And I'm going to make sure you get back to your parents." Hope sparked in Ilara's eyes, quickly followed by fear. "But the guards—" "Leave that to me." Lysandra glanced around the room, thinking rapidly. The tower had only one entrance, the door she'd come through, but there was a window overlooking the eastern gardens. It was a long drop, but if they could somehow— A flash of inspiration struck her. She moved to the bed, stripping it of its sheets and blankets. "I'm going to make a rope," she explained to Ilara, who watched with wide eyes. "We'll tie it to the bedpost and climb down." As she worked, knotting the fabrics together, Lysandra's mind raced ahead. The gardens would be relatively empty during the feast. But then what? The castle walls were guarded. The gates watched. How far could they get before they were discovered missing? She was so absorbed in her planning that she didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. The door swung open, and Lysandra whirled around, instinctively pushing Ilara behind her. Lord Darius stood in the doorway, his face contorted with rage. Behind him, the two guards looked on, their expressions grim. "What is the meaning of this?" the priest demanded, his gaze taking in the makeshift rope, the stripped bed. Lysandra's mouth went dry. "My lord, Silence!" he spat. "Did you truly think you could interfere with a sacred ritual? You, a nobody, a servant with no name, no lineage?" He turned to the guards. "Seize her. She will face the Alpha King's judgment for this treachery." Rough hands grabbed Lysandra's arms, and she heard Ilara cry out behind her. As they dragged her from the room, the little girl's terrified face was the last thing she saw before the door slammed shut. They marched her down the tower steps, across courtyards and corridors, straight toward the great hall where the feast was in full swing. Lysandra's legs trembled beneath her, but she forced herself to walk upright. If she was going to die tonight, and she had little doubt that she would do so with what dignity she could muster. The massive doors to the hall swung open, and a hush fell over the gathered nobility as Lord Darius strode in, Lysandra in tow. At the high table, Alpha King Thorn sat, his golden eyes immediately fixing on the disruption. "Your Majesty," Lord Darius called, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. "We have discovered a traitor in our midst. This servant girl was attempting to steal away the tribute." Whispers erupted around the hall. Lysandra felt hundreds of eyes upon her, judging, condemning. She kept her gaze fixed ahead, refusing to cower even as they forced her to her knees before the high table. "Is this true?" The Alpha King's voice was deep, resonant, carrying easily across the hall without being raised. Lysandra looked up, meeting those golden eyes directly. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Servants did not look directly at the Alpha King. It was a breach of protocol, of hierarchy, of everything their society was built upon. But Lysandra was beyond caring about protocol now. "Yes, Your Majesty. I was trying to save her life." More whispers, more shocked expressions. Lord Darius stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "Your Majesty, this servant clearly doesn't understand the significance of our sacred traditions. She has committed treason against you and blasphemy against the goddess. The punishment must be—" "Silence." The Alpha King raised a hand, and the priest fell quiet immediately. King Thorn's gaze remained fixed on Lysandra, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "What is your name, girl?" "Lysandra, Your Majesty. And what position do you hold in this castle?" She swallowed, aware of how pathetic her answer would sound. "I'm a cleaning servant, Your Majesty. I tend to the floors and linens." A nobleman near the front snickered, and several others joined in. "She's just a servant," someone whispered loudly enough to be heard. "A nobody." The Alpha King's gaze flickered toward the voice, then back to Lysandra. And yet, this nobody had the courage to defy tradition and risk her life for a child she doesn't know. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Lysandra, why? What made you take such a risk? The hall grew silent again, all waiting for her response. Lysandra took a deep breath. Because it's wrong, Your Majesty. Taking a child's life won't bring the goddess's blessing. It will bring her wrath. Life should be protected, not sacrificed. Outrage rippled through the gathering. Lord Darius stepped forward again, his face contorted. Your Majesty, this is heresy. The blood moon sacrifice has protected our lands for generations. King Thorn raised his hand again, and once more silence fell instantly. He studied Lysandra for what felt like an eternity, his expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's shock, he rose from his seat and descended the steps from the high table, approaching her where she knelt. Up close, his presence was even more overwhelming. Lysandra could feel the power emanating from him, not just the physical strength that all werewolves possessed, but something deeper, more primal. The power of an alpha whose bloodline stretched back to the dawn of their kind. He extended a hand toward her, and for a horrible moment, Lysandra thought he meant to strike her down himself. Instead, he placed his fingers beneath her chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze more fully. Interesting, he said, his voice so low that perhaps only she could hear it. Then, louder, addressing the entire hall, I have made my decision. Lord Darius smiled triumphantly, already stepping forward as if to carry out whatever punishment the king would decree. But King Thorn's next words froze everyone in place. The sacrifice is cancelled. The child will be returned to her parents immediately. A collective gasp rose from the assembly, followed by confused murmurs. Lord Darius's face drained of color. But Your Majesty, he protested, his voice trembling. The blood moon, the goddess speaks to me directly, Lord Darius, not through you. The Alpha King cut him off, his tone leaving no room for argument. And tonight, she has spoken through this servant girl. His golden eyes returned to Lysandra, something unreadable flickering in their depths. Rise, Lysandra. Shakily she obeyed, hardly believing what was happening. The Alpha King turned to address the stunned gathering. For too long, we have been bound by traditions that serve no purpose but to perpetuate fear. The time for change has come. He reached out and to Lysandra's complete shock took her hand in his. Under the blood moon tonight, I will not take a life. I will claim a mate. The hall erupted in chaos. Noble women gasped in horror. Noblemen shouted in protest. Lady Esmeralda actually fainted, collapsing dramatically into the arms of a nearby guard. A servant? Someone cried out. Your Majesty, you cannot be serious. She has no bloodline, no training, another voice added. King Thorn's expression darkened, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. You dare question your alpha? His voice was soft, but it carried an edge that silenced every protest instantly. I have chosen. When the blood moon rises tonight, Lysandra will be crowned my queen. Lysandra stood frozen in place, her mind unable to process what was happening. This morning she had been on her knees scrubbing floors. Now, the most powerful alpha in the 5 territories was declaring her his mate. It couldn't be real. It had to be some cruel joke, or worse, a different kind of punishment, more elaborate and humiliating than a simple execution. But when she looked into King Thorn's golden eyes, she saw no mockery there. Instead, she found something that looked almost like admiration. Prepare her, he commanded, addressing no one in particular. The ceremony begins at midnight. As attendants rushed forward to lead her away, Lysandra caught one last glimpse of the Alpha King's face. For just a moment, the mask of cold authority slipped, and she saw something else there, something that made her heart skip a beat. Anticipation, challenge, and perhaps, though she could hardly believe it, hope. Lysandra stood trembling in the royal preparation chambers, a room twice the size of the servants' quarters. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, casting colorful patterns across marble floors. Arms up, commanded Marianne, a stern-faced attendant who hadn't stopped scowling since being assigned to prepare the future queen. Lysandra obeyed, trying not to cringe as they removed her rough servant's dress. She fought the urge to cover herself as 3 attendants circled her critically. She'll need to be scrubbed thoroughly, one said, wrinkling her nose. She smells of floor polish and kitchen grease. And those hands, another added with disdain. Like a farmer's wife. What can you expect? Marianne sniffed. She's just a servant. The words were familiar. Lysandra had heard them all her life. but now they stung in a new way. Just hours ago, she had been invisible. Now she was being scrutinized from every angle. They led her to a copper bathtub filled with steaming water and rose petals. The attendant scrubbed her skin until it turned pink, washed her hair 3 times, and filed her nails until her fingertips felt raw. "Why is he doing this?" Lysandra finally asked. "Why me?" The attendants exchanged glances. "It's not our place to question the Alpha King's decisions," Marianne replied stiffly. A younger attendant named Helena leaned closer. "They say he's never shown interest in any of the noble daughters presented to him," she whispered. 29 years old and not a single courtship. "Helena," Marianne warned. "I'm just saying what everyone knows," Helena protested. "And now to choose a—" She glanced apologetically at Lysandra. "Well, it's unusual." Another attendant entered carrying a dress that made Lysandra gasp. It was deep crimson, the color of the blood moon itself, with delicate gold embroidery along the bodice and hem. "This is meant for me?" she asked, hardly daring to touch it. "By order of the Alpha King himself," Marianne confirmed, though she looked bitter saying it. When they finished dressing her, they positioned her before a full-length mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Gone was the servant girl with chapped hands and simple braided hair. In her place stood someone who looked like she belonged among nobility. "Is that truly me?" Lysandra whispered. "A convincing illusion," came a cold voice from the doorway. Lady Esmeralda stood there, resplendent in midnight blue. The attendants immediately bowed and hurried out at her command. Once the door closed, Lady Esmeralda circled Lysandra slowly. "Pretty enough, I suppose, with all that polish. But silk and jewels don't change what you are underneath." "A child's life was at stake," Lysandra said quietly. Lady Esmeralda laughed bitterly. "And now you think yourself a hero? Let me tell you what will happen, servant girl. The Alpha King has made his spectacle, proven his power to overturn our traditions on a whim. But once the moon sets, his interest in you will fade. You're a novelty, nothing more." The words settled like ice in Lysandra's stomach. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Consider it a kindness. Better to understand your position now than to nurture false hopes." Lady Esmeralda adjusted a pin in Lysandra's hair with surprising gentleness. "My daughter, Callista, has been groomed since birth to be the Alpha Queen. She has the bloodline, the education, the grace that you will never possess. The king has made his choice," Lysandra said, finding unexpected courage. "If what you say is true and his interest fades, so be it, but I won't step aside based on your assessment of my worth." Lady Esmeralda's face hardened. Bold words from a girl who, until today, jumped at my every command. She moved toward the door, then paused. "Enjoy your moment in the moonlight, Lysandra. When it ends, and it will end, you'll find the shadows much darker than before." The blood moon ceremony had been transformed. Where there should have been an altar for sacrifice, there now stood an archway woven with roses and lilies. The nobility wore traditional mourning colors, creating a stark contrast with the hastily arranged decorations. As Lysandra entered the great hall, hundreds of eyes followed her progress. She caught glimpses of familiar faces, kitchen workers she'd laughed with, gardeners who'd slipped her flowers, even the head housekeeper who had taken her in as a child when her parents died. At the end of the aisle stood Alpha King Thorn, his imposing figure clothed in ceremonial black embroidered with silver. His golden eyes tracked her approach, his expression revealing nothing. Lord Darius waited beside him, his face a mask of dignity, though his eyes burned with fury. As Lysandra reached them, the Alpha King extended his hand, which she hesitantly took. "Citizens of the 5 territories," Lord Darius began, "we gather under the blood moon to witness an unexpected union." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter ran through the crowd. "Alpha King Thorn, ruler of the 5 territories, protector of our lands, descendant of the first wolf, has chosen a mate," he continued. "Let all who witness acknowledge this bond, forged under the blood moon and blessed by the goddess herself. Do you, Alpha King Thorn, claim this woman as your mate, to lead beside you, to share in your strength and your burden, until death separates your souls?" "I do," the Alpha King replied steadily. Lord Darius turned to Lysandra. "And do you, Lysandra, accept this claim, pledging your loyalty, your submission, and your life to your Alpha King?" Lysandra hesitated. Submission. The word stood out starkly. She had spent her life submitting to others' wills. Was she simply trading one form of servitude for another? She looked up at King Thorn, searching his face for some hint of his true intentions. His expression remained impassive, but something in his eyes seemed to challenge her. "I accept the claim," she said clearly. "I pledge my loyalty and my life to the Alpha King, but not my submission. I will stand beside him, not beneath him." Gasps erupted throughout the hall. Lord Darius's face reddened. Even King Thorn's eyebrows rose slightly, though she detected a flash of amusement in his gaze. "The traditional vows," Lord Darius began, "are accepted as given," King Thorn interrupted firmly. "Proceed with the ceremony." Lord Darius placed a golden circlet on Lysandra's head. "Under the blood moon, I crown thee Alpha Queen Lysandra, mate to Alpha King Thorn, ruler of the 5 territories." King Thorn turned to face the assembly. "Behold your queen," he declared. After a moment of stunned silence, the traditional response came, reluctant at first, then gathering strength. "Long live the Alpha King and Queen. May their reign bring prosperity and peace to the 5 territories." The feast in the Eastern Gardens was an uncomfortable affair. Lysandra sat beside Thorn at the high table, acutely aware of the stares. The nobility approached one by one to offer congratulations with cold eyes and false smiles. "You must be overwhelmed," said Lady Callista, Lady Esmeralda's daughter. "Such a dramatic change in circumstances." "Indeed," Lysandra replied simply. "If you need guidance navigating court protocols, I would be delighted to assist," Callista continued condescendingly. Lysandra noticed Thorn watching the exchange with interest. "That's very kind," she said, reaching for her goblet. "But I've spent years observing the nobility at close range. It's remarkable what you notice when people think you're invisible." Callista's smile faltered. "Well, the offer stands. Good evening, your majesties." "Nicely handled," Thorn commented quietly after she left. "I've had practice deflecting condescension," Lysandra replied. As the moon reached its zenith, Thorn rose to his feet. The crowd immediately fell silent. "My people," he began, "tonight marks a new beginning for our territories. For too long, we have been bound by traditions that no longer serve us, blinded by prejudices that weaken rather than strengthen our pack." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but no one interrupted. "The blood moon has long been associated with sacrifice. Tonight, I have indeed sacrificed something. Not an innocent life, but the comfortable illusion that bloodlines determine worth." His hand rested on Lysandra's shoulder. "In my new queen, I have found courage, compassion, and clarity of purpose. These are the qualities that will guide us forward. Tomorrow, we begin implementing changes that are long overdue," he announced. "But tonight is for celebration." The music swelled, signaling the start of dancing. Thorn extended his hand to Lysandra. "Shall we join them, my queen?" "I don't know the steps," she admitted quietly. A small smile touched his lips, the first she'd seen. "Neither do I, particularly. We shall improvise." As they danced, Lysandra found the courage to ask, "Why me? Of all the women you could have chosen, why a servant girl you'd never spoken to before today?" "Because you were willing to die for a principle," he replied. "That kind of courage is rare, especially in these halls where survival often depends on compromise." "That doesn't explain making me your queen," she pressed. "Because I need someone who sees clearly, someone untainted by court politics and ancient grudges, someone who will speak truth to power, even when that power is mine." His expression grew somber. "Dark days are coming, Lysandra. I need a queen who stands beside me, not beneath me." Before she could ask what he meant, the music shifted, and protocol demanded they separate to dance with others. Lord Darius claimed Lysandra, his grip uncomfortably tight. "Enjoying your elevation, your majesty?" he asked, the title sounding like an insult. "It has been surprising," she replied diplomatically. He leaned closer. "Do not grow too comfortable. The blood moon brings change, but not all changes endure." "I serve at the pleasure of the Alpha King," she responded steadily. "Indeed, and his pleasures may be fleeting." His smile was cold. "Remember your place, girl. Crown or no crown, you are still just a servant." By the time she returned to Thorn's side, her feet ached and her head spun. The moon had begun its descent, and guests were starting to leave. "It is time for us to retire as well," Thorn said, offering his arm. Lysandra took it, then froze as she realized what retirement meant. The Alpha King's chambers, the final part of the mating ceremony, the physical claiming. "You have nothing to fear from me," he said quietly as they walked. "The ceremonial aspects of our union are complete. What happens next is between us alone." The Alpha King's chambers were magnificent, a vast suite with vaulted ceilings and a fire burning in the hearth. Thorn closed the door behind them, and for the first time they were truly alone. "You're trembling," he observed. "Forgive me, Thorn. This is all rather overwhelming." He moved to a side table and poured 2 glasses of wine. "You must have questions," he said, handing her one. "Lord Darius seems to think my position is temporary," she said directly. "Lady Esmeralda suggested the same. Is it?" "And what do you think?" he asked. "I think you're a man who plans carefully. I think nothing that happened today was impulsive, but I don't know what your true objective might be." A warm smile touched his lips. "Perceptive. No, Lysandra, your position is not temporary. I meant every word of my vows. You are my queen, now, and until death." "But you don't know me," she protested. "I know what matters. I've watched you for months. Your kindness to younger servants, your efficiency, your quiet dignity, despite the noble's disregard." He took a step toward her. "And today, I saw your courage and moral clarity. These are the qualities I need in the woman who stands beside me." "You mentioned dark days coming," she said. "What did you mean?" Thorn's expression darkened. "There are forces gathering beyond our borders. The wolf hunters have returned." Lysandra inhaled sharply. The wolf hunters were legends. Humans who had once waged war against werewolves with silver weapons and ancient magic. "They're just stories," she said uncertainly. "I wish they were. 3 of our border outposts have been destroyed in the past month. Entire patrols slaughtered, their bodies left as warnings. And the blood moon sacrifice? Was that truly meant to appease the goddess? Lord Darius and his faction believe so. They cling to superstitions, thinking blood offerings will bring divine protection. I've tolerated their foolishness until now, but I will not sacrifice innocent lives for their delusions, especially not when we need unity." "And you think I can help bring unity?" she asked skeptically. "The nobility clearly resents me." "The nobility represents only a fraction of our people," he replied. "The common wolves, the craftsmen, farmers, servants, they outnumber the noble houses 10 to 1. For too long, they've been excluded from power. You understand their struggles in a way I cannot. Together, we can unite all our people against the common threat." "And what of us?" she asked quietly. "This mating bond, what do you expect from me as your wife?" Thorn approached slowly. "I expect your honesty, your counsel, and your partnership. The rest will develop as it may. We have time." Relief washed over her, followed by an unexpected pang of something like disappointment. "Where will I sleep tonight?" she asked practically. He gestured toward a door. "There are adjoining chambers through there. They're yours for as long as you wish them." "Thank you," she said, grateful for his consideration. He took her hand and brought it to his lips, the gesture feeling more personal than formal this time. "Rest well, my queen," he said softly. "Tomorrow, your new life truly begins." As Lysandra retreated to her chambers, finding them luxurious beyond imagination, she wondered what that new life would entail. Alpha Queen Lysandra. The title still felt like borrowed clothing, too fine and ill-fitting. Yet as she removed the crimson gown and golden crown, settling into a bed softer than any she'd known, she made a silent promise to herself. She might have been just a servant yesterday, but tomorrow, she would begin learning how to be a queen. Whether the nobility accepted her or not, whether Thorn's motives were as straightforward as he claimed, she would face whatever challenges came with the same courage that had led her to defy tradition and save a child's life. After all, she had already survived the impossible once today. Perhaps she could do it again tomorrow. Lysandra woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she lay disoriented, the silken sheets and plush mattress foreign against her skin. Then reality crashed back. The blood moon ceremony, the crown, Thorn's revelations about the wolf hunters. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called, pulling the blankets higher. A young servant girl appeared, carrying a breakfast tray. She froze upon seeing Lysandra, nearly dropping her burden. "Your Majesty," she stammered, eyes wide. "I didn't... That is... It's all right," Lysandra assured her, recognizing the girl from the kitchens. "Mina, isn't it? You know my name?" Mina looked shocked. "We've worked together for years," Lysandra replied gently. "Why wouldn't I remember you?" Mina placed the tray carefully on a side table. "The others said you'd be different now, that you'd forget where you came from." "It's been one day," Lysandra said, smiling despite herself. "I haven't forgotten anything." After Mina left, Lysandra examined the clothes laid out for her. A gown of deep blue silk, embroidered with silver thread, so different from her servant's uniform. As she dressed, she wondered what duties a queen was expected to perform. Would there be lessons, or would she be left to flounder while the court watched and judged? When she emerged from her chambers, she found Thorn waiting, magnificent in dark leather and silver. His golden eyes assessed her with approval. "You look regal," he commented. "Are you ready to begin?" "Begin what, exactly?" "Your training," he replied. "A queen must understand the territories she rules." The morning passed in a blur of introductions and information. Thorn guided her through the royal wing, introducing her to advisors, counselors, and staff, many of whom regarded her with barely concealed skepticism. "The Treasury reports will be delivered weekly," explained Lord Fenris, a thin, scholarly wolf with spectacles perched on his nose. "You'll want to review them carefully, particularly the expenditures for border defense." Yes, of course," Lysandra agreed, though she'd never managed anything more complex than cleaning schedules. By midday, her head throbbed with new names and protocols. As they paused in a secluded courtyard, Thorn studied her face. "Overwhelmed?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Completely," she admitted. "I've gone from scrubbing floors to reviewing territorial defenses in one day." "You'll adapt," he said confidently, "more quickly than most realize." A commotion at the courtyard entrance drew their attention. Lady Esmeralda appeared, accompanied by her husband and daughter. "Your Majesties," Lord Darius greeted, bowing stiffly. "We've come to discuss the cancelled sacrifice." "There's nothing to discuss," Thorn replied, his tone hardening. "The practice ends now." "The goddess requires tribute," Lord Darius insisted. "The blood moon has passed, but her appetite remains. Already there are signs of her displeasure." "What signs?" Lysandra asked. Lord Darius's gaze flicked to her dismissively. "The southern fields report blight. 3 hunting parties returned empty-handed yesterday. These are omens, Your Majesty." "Or natural occurrences," she countered. "Crops fail. Hunts go poorly. The ignorance of a servant given authority beyond her comprehension," Lady Esmeralda remarked coldly. "Enough," Thorn growled, the sound rumbling from deep in his chest. "The old ways are done, Lord Darius. Find another way to serve your goddess that doesn't involve innocent blood." The priest's expression darkened. "As you command, Alpha King. But when disaster befalls us, remember this moment." After they departed, Lysandra noticed Thorn watching her. "What? You spoke with authority," he observed. "Good. It didn't seem to impress them." "It will take time for some to adjust," he acknowledged. "But others will see your value more quickly." The afternoon brought a council meeting where border security was discussed. Lords and military commanders argued strategy, while Lysandra listened, learning rapidly. When she finally ventured an observation about undefended supply routes, the room fell silent. "The Queen makes a valid point," Thorn said into the awkward pause. "Commander Elias, have the mountain passes reinforced." "At once, Your Majesty," the commander replied, nodding respectfully to Lysandra. That small acknowledgement felt like victory. Later, as twilight descended, a servant brought an unexpected summons from the castle kitchens. Curious, Lysandra made her way down familiar passages to the warm, bustling heart of the castle. The kitchen staff froze when she entered, then burst into a flurry of bows and curtsies. "Please," she said, embarrassed, "don't stand on ceremony." "What's happened?" Old Cook Marta stepped forward, wringing her apron nervously. "Begging your pardon, Your Majesty, but there's trouble with the storage cellars. Lord Darius ordered them sealed this morning. Says they're cursed by the goddess. But our winter stores are there, and without access." "Take me there," Lysandra interrupted, a suspicion forming. The storage cellars were indeed sealed. Heavy chains wrapped around the doors, marked with religious symbols. Lysandra examined them thoughtfully. "Fetch me a guard," she instructed. When one arrived, she pointed to the chains. "Remove these, by order of the Queen." The guard hesitated. Lord Darius said, I am your queen, Lysandra stated firmly, drawing herself up to her full height. The Alpha King named me his equal. Will you defy both of us? After a moment's hesitation, the guard broke the chains. Inside, the cellars appeared perfectly normal, until Lysandra noticed water seeping from a cracked wall. It's not a curse, she announced to the gathered staff. It's a broken pipe from the east well. Have it repaired immediately. As she returned to the royal wing, she felt a newfound confidence. Perhaps she could do this after all. When she entered their chambers, she found Thorn waiting with an unexpected smile. I hear you've been solving mysteries in the kitchens, he remarked. Word travels fast, she replied. It wasn't a mystery, just a broken pipe that Lord Darius tried to blame on divine retribution. Thorn's expression grew serious. Be careful with him, Lysandra. His faction holds significant power, and they'll resist change every step of the way. Why do you tolerate them at all? Because open conflict within our ranks is the last thing we need with the wolf hunters approaching our borders. He stepped closer, his golden eyes intense. We need unity now more than ever. And you think a former servant as queen will bring unity? She asked skeptically. I think you've shown more wisdom today than most of my council has in years. His hand reached out, fingers lightly tracing her cheek. You're proving me right, Lysandra. The unexpected touch sent warmth coursing through her. Thorn's gaze dropped to her lips, and for a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back. Rest well, he said softly. Tomorrow brings new challenges. As Lysandra prepared for sleep that night, she reflected on the day's events. She had stood up to Lord Darius, contributed in council, and solved a practical problem. Small victories, perhaps, but victories nonetheless. She was no longer just a servant. Whether the nobility accepted it yet or not, she was becoming a queen. 1 month into her reign as Alpha Queen, Lysandra stood on the castle's highest tower, watching the sunrise paint the 5 territories in gold. The transformation in her life still felt surreal, from scrubbing floors to commanding armies, from invisibility to power, all in the space of a few short weeks. Your Majesty? Commander Elias approached, bowing respectfully. Gone was the skepticism he'd shown at their first meeting, replaced by genuine regard. The border patrols report movement in the north. The wolf hunters appear to be gathering. How many? She asked, her voice steady despite the chill that ran down her spine. Hundreds, possibly more. They've established camps just beyond our territory markers. He hesitated. They have silver weapons, many more than we anticipated. Lysandra nodded grimly. Inform the Alpha King. Double the northern patrols and continue monitoring their movements. And Commander, she added as he turned to go, make sure our people in the outlying villages are prepared for evacuation if necessary. At once, Your Majesty. As he departed, Lysandra allowed herself a moment of reflection. The past month had been a battle on multiple fronts. While preparing for war with the wolf hunters, she'd fought daily for acceptance within the pack. Some, like Commander Elias, had come to respect her based on her decisions and leadership. Others, particularly Lord Darius's faction, remained hostile, undermining her at every turn. Through it all, Thorn had stood beside her, supporting her authority publicly, while privately guiding her through the intricacies of leadership. Their relationship had evolved into a true partnership, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Yet something remained unresolved between them. Though they shared adjoining chambers and spent most of their waking hours together, Thorn had not claimed her as his mate in the physical sense. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch, but he always maintained a careful distance, as if respecting boundaries she wasn't sure she wanted anymore. Deep thoughts? Thorn's voice startled her from her reverie. He stood in the doorway to the tower, his powerful frame silhouetted against the morning light. Reports from the north, she explained, turning to face him. The wolf hunters are gathering in greater numbers than we expected. Thorn's expression darkened. I've called the council. We need to finalize our defensive strategy. He offered his arm. Walk with me? As they descended the tower stairs, Lysandra was acutely aware of his presence beside her. The border villages should be evacuated, she said, focusing on the immediate crisis. If the hunters cross our borders... Agreed, Thorn replied. We'll begin moving the outer settlements toward the central territories immediately. Before they reached the council chambers, a messenger intercepted them, his face grave. Your Majesties, Lord Darius requests your presence in the Great Hall. He says it's a matter of urgent spiritual importance. Thorn and Lysandra exchanged a wary glance. Lord Darius had grown increasingly vocal about the divine retribution he claimed would follow their abandonment of the blood moon sacrifice. "This can't be good," Lysandra murmured as they changed course. The great hall was crowded when they arrived. Lord Darius stood at its center, surrounded by his supporters. Beside him, looking pale and frightened, stood the little girl Alara, the child Lysandra had tried to save from sacrifice, setting all these events in motion. "What is the meaning of this?" Thorn demanded, his voice carrying across the hall. Lord Darius stepped forward, his ceremonial robes rustling. "Alpha King, the goddess has spoken. The child is marked by divine judgment." He gestured to Alara, who trembled visibly. "See for yourself." At Thorn's nod, Lysandra approached the girl, kneeling to examine her. With growing horror, she saw what had prompted Darius's proclamation. A silver-tinged rash spread across the child's arms, painful-looking and distinctly unnatural. "This is the goddess's curse," Lord Darius announced to the gathered crowd. "The price of defying the blood moon sacrifice. First the child, then it will spread to all of us. Unless what?" Thorn asked, though the answer was obvious. "Unless we complete the ritual that was interrupted. The goddess demands her due." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear was a powerful motivator, and many in the pack still held the old beliefs deeply. "This is not a divine curse," Lysandra stated firmly, rising to her feet. "This is silver poisoning." Lord Darius scoffed. "How would you know, servant girl? Have you studied the ancient texts? Communed with the goddess?" "No," Lysandra replied calmly. "But I've treated silver burns before, when the kitchen workers handle silverware without proper protection." She turned to Thorn. "The symptoms are identical." "Blasphemy," Lord Darius cried. "The child was chosen by the goddess. Her mark is upon the girl. Or someone has deliberately exposed her to silver," Thorn suggested, his golden eyes hardening, "to manufacture a curse and manipulate the pack's fears." The accusation hung in the air. Lord Darius's face flushed with outrage. "You dare accuse me of—" "I accuse no one specifically," Thorn interrupted. "Yet this reeks of manipulation." Lady Esmeralda pushed through the crowd, her daughter Callista at her side. "The Alpha King dismisses ancient wisdom in favor of a servant's opinion," she declared loudly. "Is this what our pack has come to?" Tensions in the hall were rising. Lysandra could sense the pack dividing before her eyes, some rallying behind Lord Darius, others looking to their alpha for guidance. This was exactly what Thorn had feared. Internal division just as external threats gathered at their borders. "Enough," Lysandra commanded, her voice stronger than she'd intended. To her surprise, the hall quieted. "This child needs treatment, not debate." "I will tend to her myself." "And risk spreading the curse?" Lord Darius challenged. "If it's a curse, then surely I deserve to suffer it first," Lysandra replied evenly. "After all, I was the one who interrupted your ritual." She met his gaze directly. "But when I cure her with simple remedies, what will that say about your divine interpretation?" Lord Darius's expression tightened. "The pack should witness this. Let us all see whether servant's herbs or goddess's will prevails." "So be it," Thorn agreed, before Lysandra could respond. "The child will remain in the castle under the Queen's care. If she recovers, we will consider this matter settled." As the crowd dispersed, Thorn pulled Lysandra aside. "You're certain you can treat this?" "I know the remedy," she confirmed. "But that's not the real issue, is it? Someone deliberately harmed this child to create a spiritual crisis within the pack. Precisely when we can least afford division," Thorn agreed grimly. "Lord Darius plays a dangerous game. Why not simply remove him from his position?" Thorn's expression was troubled. "He has too many supporters, too much influence. Moving against him directly could trigger exactly the kind of internal conflict we're trying to avoid." He touched her shoulder lightly. "Heal the child. Prove him wrong through actions rather than accusations." Over the next 3 days, Lysandra barely left Alara's side. Using a poultice of herbs and healing techniques she'd learned from the castle's herbalist years ago, she worked tirelessly to draw the silver poison from the child's system. Gradually, the angry rash began to fade, the pain diminished, and Alara's strength returned. Word spread quickly through the pack. Many came to witness the recovery for themselves, including some who had been firmly in Lord Darius's camp. The priest himself remained conspicuously absent, as did Lady Esmeralda and her daughter. On the fourth morning, as Lysandra checked Alara's now clear skin, a commotion erupted in the courtyard below. The sound of shouting and running feet drew her to the window. "Stay here," she instructed the child, before rushing downstairs. In the main courtyard, chaos reigned. Warriors rushed to the gates, while servants ran in the opposite direction, seeking shelter. Commander Elias spotted her and hurried over. "Your Majesty, the wolf hunters have breached the northern border," he reported. "They've moved faster than we anticipated. Our patrols report heavy casualties." "Where is the Alpha King?" she demanded. "In the war room with the council. He sent me to find you." Lysandra hurried through the castle, her mind racing. They had expected an attack, but not so soon. Not before the evacuation of the border settlements was complete. The war room was filled with maps and grim-faced advisors when she arrived. Thorne stood at the center, his expression taut with concentration. "How bad?" she asked without preamble. "Bad," he confirmed. "They've overwhelmed our northern outposts and are moving toward the villages. We're deploying all available warriors, but it may not be enough," she finished for him, studying the map. "These settlements need to be evacuated immediately. We're sending teams now, but the hunters are moving too quickly. Some villages may be unreachable before they arrive." The implications were horrific. Humans with silver weapons against unprepared civilian wolves, including elders and children. "I should be out there," Thorne said, frustration evident in his voice. "My place is with our warriors, not planning behind stone walls." "You're needed here," Lysandra countered. "You're coordinating our entire defense. Without you," a messenger burst into the room, breathless and bloody. "Your Majesties, the eastern border has also been breached. It's a coordinated attack." The room erupted into frantic activity. Commander Elias began redirecting troops, while other advisors argued over the best defensive positions. Through it all, Lysandra watched Thorne, seeing the weight of leadership heavy upon him. "We need to know who's behind these coordinated attacks," she said quietly, when she could get him alone for a moment. "This isn't a random human uprising. Someone with intimate knowledge of our defenses is guiding them." Thorne's golden eyes met hers. "I've had the same thought, and I have my suspicions." "Lord Darius? I believe so, but I can't prove it." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "If he's betrayed us to the wolf hunters, his reasons must be tied to the blood moon traditions. Perhaps he believes that destroying me and installing a more traditional alpha would appease his goddess." "Then we need evidence," Lysandra said decisively, "and I think I know where to look." Before Thorne could question her further, another messenger arrived with news of a third breach at the southern border. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Under the cover of the mounting chaos, Lysandra slipped away. If her suspicions were correct, Lord Darius would be meeting with his conspirators now, while the castle's attention was focused on the attacks, and she knew all the secret passages that servants used to move invisibly throughout the castle. Making her way to the eastern wing where the priest's private chambers were located, Lysandra used a servant's entrance to gain access to the adjoining room. Pressing her ear to the wall, she heard multiple voices engaged in heated discussion. "The attacks are proceeding as planned," came Lord Darius's unmistakable voice. "The Alpha King's forces are divided, unable to mount an effective defense on 3 fronts." "And what of our people in those villages?" another voice asked. "Lady Esmeralda," Lysandra realized. "The casualties are necessary sacrifices," Lord Darius cut her off. "The goddess demands blood. If not through the traditional ritual, then through cleansing fire. When the dust settles, I will assume leadership as the pack's spiritual guide, with Callista as the new alpha female, mated to whoever emerges as the strongest contender for alpha male." "The servant queen?" a third voice asked. "Callista herself," Lysandra recognized. "Will be the first to fall," Lord Darius assured her. "I've arranged it personally." Lysandra's blood ran cold. The betrayal was worse than they'd imagined. Not just conspiracy with the wolf hunters, but the deliberate sacrifice of their own pack members. She needed to get this information to Thorne immediately. Turning to retrace her steps, she found her path blocked by a guard she didn't recognize, his eyes cold and unfriendly. "Looking for something, Your Majesty?" he asked, his tone making a mockery of the title. Before she could respond, rough hands seized her from behind. A cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, saturated with something sweet-smelling and chemical. She struggled briefly before darkness claimed her. When Lysandra regained consciousness, she found herself bound to a stone altar in what appeared to be ancient ruins deep in the forest. Her head throbbed, and her vision swam in and out of focus. Around her, cloaked figures moved in the gathering dusk, preparing for what she realized with growing horror was to be her sacrifice. Lord Darius stood at the head of the altar, his ceremonial robes replaced by something older, more primitive. Beside him, Lady Esmeralda and Callista watched with cold satisfaction. "The servant queen awakens," Lord Darius announced, just in time to fulfill her true purpose. "The wolf hunters," Lysandra managed, her throat dry and painful. "You betrayed our people to them." "I saved our people," he corrected. "The old ways must be preserved, the goddess appeased. Your interference disrupted the natural order. Now, balance will be restored." Lysandra tested her bonds, finding them secure. Her mind raced, searching for a way out, for time to delay until Thorn realized she was missing. "You won't succeed," she told him, forcing strength into her voice. The Alpha King is preoccupied with defending against attacks on 3 fronts," Lady Esmeralda interrupted smugly. "Attacks we coordinated with our human allies. By the time he realizes you're gone, it will be too late." "The goddess has spoken," Lord Darius intoned, raising a ceremonial silver dagger. "The servant who rose above her station must be returned to the earth. Her blood will renew our covenant with the divine." Lysandra's heart pounded in her chest. After everything, after finding her voice, her purpose, her place beside Thorn, to end like this, alone and helpless, felt unbearably cruel. "Any last words, servant queen?" Callista asked mockingly. Lysandra met her gaze steadily. "I may die as your queen, but I lived as something you'll never be, worthy of the title." Callista's smile faltered, but Lord Darius merely raised the dagger higher. "The goddess accepts this offering," he proclaimed. As the blade began its downward arc, a bone-chilling howl split the night air. The sound was immediately joined by others, dozens of wolves, surrounding the ruins from all sides. Lord Darius faltered, the dagger wavering in his hand. "What?" A massive black wolf burst from the tree line, larger than any Lysandra had ever seen, its golden eyes burning with rage. Thorn. Behind him came warriors of the royal guard, shifted into wolf form, teeth bared and hackles raised. Chaos erupted. The cloaked figures scattered, some trying to flee, others drawing weapons to fight. Lord Darius abandoned the ritual, backing away from the altar as Thorn advanced on him, growling low in his throat. Lady Esmeralda grabbed her daughter's arm. "Quickly, we must—" She never finished the sentence. Another wolf, this one smaller, with distinctive white markings, leapt between them and the exit, cutting off their escape. Thorn shifted back to human form in one fluid motion, his face a mask of cold fury. "Lord Darius," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "you are charged with treason against the pack, conspiracy with enemies of our kind, and attempted murder of the Alpha Queen." "I serve the goddess," Lord Darius replied, though his voice shook slightly. "Her will supersedes even yours, Alpha King." "Then let her protect you now," Thorn replied, before turning to his warriors. "Secure them. They will face pack justice for their crimes." As the conspirators were restrained, Thorn rushed to Lysandra, breaking her bonds with one powerful motion and gathering her into his arms. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured against her hair, his voice rough with emotion. "How did you find me?" she asked, clinging to him. "Ilara saw them take you. The child you saved returned the favor." His arms tightened around her. "When I realized you were missing, Lysandra, I've never known fear like that." She pulled back slightly to look up at him. "The attacks, the villages, under control," he assured her. "Once we captured one of Darius's messengers, we uncovered the full extent of the plot. The wolf hunters were being paid to create a distraction, nothing more. Without his guidance, their attacks have faltered. Relief washed over her, followed by bone-deep exhaustion. She sagged against him, the events of the day finally catching up with her. "Take me home," she whispered. The great hall was filled to capacity 3 days later. Every member of the pack who could attend had gathered to witness the judgment of the conspirators. Lord Darius, Lady Esmeralda, and Callista stood before the Alpha pair, bound and guarded. For the crimes of treason, Conspiracy with enemies of the pack and attempted murder, Thorn proclaimed, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. The punishment under pack law is death. A murmur ran through the assembly. Such a sentence had not been carried out in generations, particularly not against nobles of such high standing. However, Thorn continued, as Alpha King, it is my privilege to show mercy where I deem it appropriate. He turned to Lysandra. As the primary target of their betrayal, I defer to my queen's judgment in this matter. Lysandra rose from her throne, facing the three prisoners. For a moment, she recalled every dismissive comment, every condescending glance, every time they had reminded her that she was just a servant. How easy it would be to condemn them now. Lord Darius, she addressed the priest directly, you claimed to serve the goddess, yet you conspired to sacrifice innocent pack members for your own ambition. Your punishment is banishment from the 5 territories, never to return on pain of death. The priest's face drained of color. Banishment was, in many ways, worse than death for a pack wolf. To live without the protection and connection of the pack was a sentence to a half-life. Lady Esmeralda and Lady Callista, Lysandra continued, you will be stripped of your noble titles and privileges. You will serve the pack as ordinary wolves, contributing through labor rather than bloodline. Lady Esmeralda sagged visibly, while Callista's face contorted with hatred. You can't do this, she hissed. You're nothing but a queen, Lysandra finished for her, her voice firm. Chosen by the Alpha King, accepted by the pack, and proven by trial. Remember that as you learn what it truly means to serve others. As the prisoners were led away, the assembly erupted into cheers. Lysandra resumed her seat beside Thorn, feeling the weight of her decision but confident in its justice. You continue to surprise me, Thorn said quietly, taking her hand in his. Is that good or bad? She asked with a small smile. Very good, he replied, his golden eyes warm. You showed both strength and mercy, the mark of a true leader. The rest of the day passed in a blur of council meetings and reorganization. With Lord Darius's faction dismantled, the path forward became clearer. The wolf hunters had retreated once their payments stopped, though Thorn established permanent outposts along the borders to ensure they remained vigilant. By nightfall, Lysandra was exhausted but satisfied. As she prepared for bed in her chambers, a soft knock came at her door. Opening it, she found Thorn standing there, his usual regal bearing softened by something like uncertainty. May I come in? He asked. She stepped aside, allowing him entry. For a moment they stood in awkward silence, the tension between them palpable in a new way. You've proven yourself many times over, Thorn said finally. As a queen, as a leader, the pack sees it now, even those who doubted you at first. Thank you, she replied, unsure where this was leading. When I chose you that night, I saw potential in you that others missed, but even I didn't fully understand what you would become. He took a step closer. You've exceeded every expectation, Lysandra. She felt a flush rise to her cheeks at his praise. I had a good teacher. No, he shook his head. This was always in you. The courage, the compassion, the clarity of thought. I simply gave you the opportunity to show it. Another step closer. Now he was near enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the distinctive scent that was uniquely his. I've kept my distance, he continued, his voice dropping lower, because I wanted you to find your own strength, to know your own worth, without complications. Complications? She echoed, her pulse quickening. The physical aspects of our mating bond, he clarified, his golden eyes darkening. I didn't want you to feel that your position depended on being my wife in every sense. Understanding dawned on her. All this time, he had been holding back out of respect for her, wanting her to establish herself independently. And now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Now, he said, reaching out to trace the line of her cheek with gentle fingers. I find I can no longer maintain that distance. Not unless you wish it. The touch of his fingers against her skin sent warmth spiraling through her. This was different from their formal interactions, their political partnership. This was Thorn, the man, not the Alpha King, reaching out to her as a woman. I don't wish it, she admitted, stepping into the circle of his arms. I haven't for some time. His smile was transformative, lighting his usually serious features with genuine joy. Then, my queen, he murmured, lowering his head toward hers. "May I finally claim you properly?" In answer, Lysandra rose on her toes, pressing her lips to his. The kiss began gently, a tentative exploration, but quickly deepened into something more primal. Thorn's arms tightened around her, pulling her flush against him as years of restraint finally gave way to passion. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Thorn rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "Not for what you represent, or what you can do for the pack, but for who you are." "And who am I?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. His smile was tender now. "You are Lysandra, not just a servant, not just a queen. You are the woman I choose, today and every day hereafter." As he claimed her lips again, Lysandra knew that whatever challenges lay ahead for them and their pack, they would face them together, equal partners, bound by choice rather than tradition. She had been just a servant once, but she had become so much more. A leader, a defender, a queen, and most importantly, she had become herself. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.